This is a session where I transcend from stage host to chairperson, and I'm going to be joining the stage. So please put on your headphones. I think you can still hear me through those, but towards the back might be a bit more difficult. We've got pigeonhole.at if you want to ask us questions. I'm going to try and keep abreast of both. You can scan the QR code. It's code ETL 2023 if you haven't done that already. And over here, I'm not going to look at it because my brain did a somersault whilst looking at my own words appear, and I couldn't talk for a bit. So I'd like to introduce Josh Sinclair from Informa. Josh is head of technology for Informa Connect. Josh does a role that's very similar to a role I used to do at Reed Exhibitions. So we thought it'd be great to get together and talk about tech and transformation and how events can implement tech, some of the ups and downs, the tech that's up and coming at the moment, and hopefully give you some ideas to take to your own events. So should we take a seat? And so I'm first going to just let you tell the audience a little bit about your role and what that encompasses.
Yeah, thanks, Aid. So my name's Josh. I work in Informa Connect. I've been there now for about 5 years, and I have transcended probably every part of the event technology process, from registration to lead retrieval to AV to apps. And what I want to do here today is just talk through some of the things we've done well, some of the things we've done badly, and more importantly, where we think the future of event technology is for ourselves across 400 smart events a year.
Great. So I think I'll start off with the question we all want answered, which is, you're from Informa, the biggest organizer in the world. What is Informa doing that's really cool at the moment that people will be interested to hear about?
Yeah, so one thing I will mention is Informa Connect is part of the Informa B2B services division. So what we actually specialize in is more conference-based and complex products with a significant amount of content, a significant complexity around tracks and speakers. Some of our events go 12 to 15 concurrent tracks of content. And one of the problems we've had for a long, long time is session scanning. We've really, from a data quality perspective and from an attendee experience perspective, it's not great to be constantly scanned in and out and in and out. So as you may have seen on LinkedIn and other social medias recently, we've been partnering with a company called Crowd Connected to provide a passive BLE-style tracking solution. So that is really our driving force behind innovation at the moment. What that allows us to do is remove the need to scan attendees in and out of rooms. We see a subsequent increase in Net Promoter Score, and also exhibitors are much more happy.
And how are the individuals tracked? What do the individuals have to do?
Yeah, so it's really simple. All there is, and I do have some demos if anyone is interested after this show, it is a tiny little BLE chip that is attached to the attendee's lanyard. So just above the badge, when the badge is printed, a BLE chip is attached to the lanyard, and that tracks then the attendee around the venue. There's no real impact on their experience, apart from their not being scanned.
Great, and we hear a lot about visitor experience, but having myself been both sides of the visitor and the exhibitor experience, as someone that believes in applying tech to events, what would your ideal experience be as an exhibitor?
Yeah, so the exhibitor angle is a really interesting one for us. We, as a lot of people are probably aware, Informa has recently acquired a lot more expo-focused products. So we're making a really conscious effort to look at our exhibitor experience. One thing we're really founding the base on is this idea that an event should be as searchable and navigatable as a website. We should be able to capture data for exhibitors across the show floor at every different touch point. And that's really the driving force behind what we're trying to do around the exhibitor experience, is making it as smooth and simple to find and search.
And then how does that exhibitor experience dovetail with the visitor experience?
Yeah, so that's a great question. It's the two, sometimes you feel as event technology people, you can fall into the trap of choosing one over the other. So you can either go, our revenue here for this event is being driven by exhibitors, therefore we focus the experience on an app that provides a great service for an exhibitor, but means the visitor has a really friction-full experience. And the inverse works as well. If you've got a high delegate revenue event, you could focus on the delegate and not the exhibitor. So what we're really trying to do is those products where we can provide a solution that not only delivers better, more qualified leads for exhibitors, but also removes the attendee friction, that they're the programs that we're really trying to drive.
And that sort of leads us on to this idea that we're bringing together experiences from different platforms. You mentioned Crowd Connected, Informa have their own internal web platform, you're using other products like meetings platforms. How do you create a seamless experience across that journey?
Yeah, so that's has been the pain of my life probably for the last 4 years. My first thing is never trust anybody who can just say the word just API it, because everybody will always just say, oh, 2 platforms, just API it. Just API it and it will work. What we've invested in terms of people and resource, and where I spend a lot of my time now, is around the enterprise and solution architecture. So actually looking at the point-to-point integrations, the integrations between all of the services, making sure they're working in the most efficient way. You can get caught up in just API it mantra, which means you just end up with a really messy ecosystem. You've got reg vendors and on-site vendors and apps and agenda management tools all going round in circles. So what I would really recommend is spend the time to invest in the enterprise and solution architecture to properly plan what you need to do.
One question I think that comes up a lot around event tech is about the amount of data that it generates and then, you know, signals about what is happening on the show floor. But how do you ensure that the data gets used once it's generated? Because we see sways of data that, and then, you know, often there's a so what afterwards.
No, absolutely. And there actually was a fantastic talk. So when everything's available on demand, Matt from Bizabo did an amazing talk on exactly this earlier in the morning. We collect so much data, and I think a lot of organisers, ourselves included, sometimes fall into the trap of more data, more data, more data. Actually, what you really need is a data strategy. So you need to know when you're collecting data, why you're collecting data, and how you're then going to use that to drive actionable insights. If you're collecting data on site that is just going to sit in a data lake or sit in an Excel sheet, or even worse, sit in a software as a service platform, and you're not doing anything with it, why are you doing it in the first place? So again, alongside the enterprise architecture, it's all about the planning of what you're doing with the data.
And can you give us any examples? Because I've seen it happen where a data scientist gets employed, given a load of data, and said, "Tell us about that data. Tell us, you know, what can that data tell us?" And as business leaders, we're not necessarily asking questions of the data. What questions are Informa asking of the data?
I think one of the things we're asking about the data at the moment, and is proving more and more important for us to understand, is how people are moving around events. So how do we build up a persona of a person? For example, if somebody at this show is consistently going to registration vendors, are we making sure that data is being used to provide recommendations on the event app for registration solutions? Are we making vendors aware that there are these kinds of people looking for their services? So it's really about connecting up the data points to provide those insights, both for the exhibitors and back to the visitors.
Something else that I've experienced in my event tech journey is this idea of, you know, fail fast, keep testing things. But events aren't necessarily used to failing. You know, like when did you last hear of a launch event that nobody went to? You know, everybody is backing dead certs in events, and I felt that often. You know, there isn't the same attitude towards failing. Do you have an example of something that failed, and how did you address that?
Yeah, so I think as an industry, we don't talk about our failures as much as we probably should, and I've definitely fallen victim to that over the last sort of 4 or 5 years that I've been at Informa. One of the things that we have always tried to do is look at our portfolio of 300, 400, 500 events as it grows and try and find solutions that fit the vast majority. So what we would do is we probably about 3 or 4 years ago looked at NFC as kind of an emerging piece of technology and went, this is great. Attendees don't need to scan QR codes. Exhibitors are going to get more leads. This is going to be fantastic. So we looked actually at one of our largest events in Germany, and we went, let's implement NFC now, and we'll just do it. And we just thought that it would get adopted because as a group and as a company, we understood what the technology was. We didn't do a great job of explaining the benefits to either side, either the visitors or the exhibitors, and we ended up with negligible adoption. People didn't understand the product. So I think what we've learned from that and what we implement now is making sure that technology solutions are aligned to an audience. So if you've got an audience that wants to go around and collect digital content, NFC is a fantastic solution to do that. If you've got a audience that is potentially more introverted than extroverted, it's a great opportunity to allow them to engage with exhibitors without having to speak to the person. Conversely, if you've got a brand or an event which is so focused on networking and people, what really is the benefit of NFC? Because people want this kind of conversation.
Yeah, no, I also think that it also depends on where the boundaries are. So, for instance, I've spoken to lots of event teams who said, "Oh, we don't use an app because it only got like 20 to 30% adoption." And I think my experience is that there's at least 10% of people that are looking for an app, usually more. And you've got to ask yourself, are the people that are heavy users of your event tools, are they the exact people that you want at your event, that you want to engage with your exhibitors at the event? So you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And on that, it's building when you have that low adoption, building the digital experience into the product. We have some events where if you are not fully engaged with the app, you might as well not show up on site because people have arranged their meetings, they have their day scheduled to a T. And we've worked that really well to create that kind of fear of missing out. And I'll be honest, it's really hard to replicate. It's really hard to replicate with different audiences. But to your point, if that 30% are showing those tools to other people, i.e. let's connect on the app, that then will hopefully snowball, and then you see the 70, 80, 90% adoption rates that we aim for.
Yeah, and I think also the last session that I was moderating was about wearable tech, and you remember those the things you look at. You point the camera in your phone and it annotates reality, and glasses is another thing, but that tech was around years ago. It's like, well, is that going to come back? And Mark Sullivan pointed out that it worked for Pokemon Go, and the Pokemon Go generation is coming. They are going to be with us in events, and the people that buy event space. So we've got to be mindful that more technically savvy generations will have more different expectations.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have a lot of, in our finance events, we have like young investor programs where exactly that happens, and people who are on grad schemes, on sponsored university degrees are coming to our events, and they are 18, 19, which is a depressing realization for me when you've got at least 15 years on them. But that's where we're seeing that exact thing. They get frustrated with some of the more clunky app experiences. They want more augmented reality, virtual reality. There's a different set of expectations for the younger age group around the technology that we deliver on site. And the events that will succeed over the next 10 years are those that really get that demographic locked down. If you do not have a strategy around engaging with the 18 to 25-year-olds and engaging them, you're really going to struggle with your product over the next 10 years.
I think the next topic we wanted to touch on was about the adoption of tech. And, you know, new things come along, and you need to test them out. You need to test them with your audiences, but it's something that you've got to keep at, because there's stakeholder management. There's, you know, integrating with different platforms. What are the challenges you've encountered? What advice can you give about managing new tech into events?
Yeah, so I think the most important thing is to be really clear with expectations and be really clear of what you are expecting to deliver through implementing a set of technology, but also being clear with stakeholders where there might be delays, there might be glitches, there might be problems. For example, if you are implementing a new tracking software or a new data set and you've not integrated it into your existing CDP, it might be that marketers can't access that information in real time. They may look at something like room scanning and go, well, we were getting that in real time when we were scanning attendees. What we've had to explain is, look, we're removing the barriers to scan. That will get us better data, but at the moment, whilst we run a proof of concept, it's going to take longer for us to drive those insights out of the data. I think setting those expectations with stakeholders across all of the business is critical.
And I think the other thing that's kind of a double-edged sword is you want your stakeholders to come and try it out for themselves, but you desperately want them to have a good experience with it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's making sure that you've got stakeholders as well that know that these things will have a glitch, will have a fail. Not everything will work first time. And we've got to adopt this iterative process where you run it once and you don't go, that was horrendous, we're never doing that again. You go, why didn't it work? And actually, if the reason it didn't work is because it was deployed badly, it doesn't mean the tech's bad, it means you didn't deploy it correctly. And you can learn from there and go and go and go. There are some things which we've absolutely had horrible experiences with first time, but when we actually analysed what we did, it was on us. We didn't explain it to stakeholders. We didn't explain it to the exhibitors and visitors. And actually, once we changed the delivery method, the technology flourished.
One of the earlier sessions on this stage, Rob Curtis was on talking about event data, and he was talking about events are analog. You know, walking around is analog, but you can create this digital mesh over the analog so that you can then understand what's going on the show floor. So, from your viewpoint of the different bits of tech that you've seen, how possible is it to digitize the show floor?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and I think it's with certain audiences it's easy. With certain audiences, younger demographics, like we've mentioned, it's really easy to digitize a show floor because they're familiar with the technology. Even if you look at QR codes now, they have been up and down and up and down and up and down for years. Everybody, including my grandparents, now know how to use a QR code. And that has digitized the experience to one step. What we need to look at next is, outside of the events world, what are those emerging technologies that are changing customer experiences in a B2C world? What are theme parks doing around RFID, BLE? What are newspapers doing around content? And how do we see the world shifting? And how do we make sure that the event tech world keeps up with that? If we dart off in another direction, we're then going to have a problem of adoption.
There was also a conversation about how Apple are getting into the wearable tech glasses, and once Apple get into it, it's like when Apple finally got into NFC on the phones, wasn't it? Then, you know, it's sort of got to a critical mass. I would like an AR augmentation of my event or my retail experience or whatever. What's your view on that? And do you think our customers would?
Yeah, I think the Apple conversation is always really funny, and anyone who's got the new iOS update will see the contact sharing. So the tap phones together, share contact information. That is obviously at the moment still locked down to Apple devices. Third-party apps can't access that functionality, but Apple will eventually allow Samsung to Apple. It will eventually allow third-party apps to engage with that contact sharing, which will revolutionize how we as an industry do lead retrieval. I think the AR and virtual reality element works for particular brands. Again, if you've got a really young audience that wants to enjoy those experiences, you can drive that product. I think for us, where some of the markets we operate, it's difficult for them to download a QR code, never mind put on a VR headset at the moment.
And I've always thought having to look at someone here to see their name is just a UI nightmare. I'd much prefer it even if it was here, but if it was over their head and they didn't even know you were looking, that would be brilliant. What are you testing at the moment that might surprise the audience?
That's a great question. There's a lot of innovation within Informa. I think people look at Informa and think, wow, FTSE 100, thousands and thousands of events, everything is very rigid. Actually, we really are fostering a real innovation culture, and we've made a real effort over the last 18 months across Connect, Tech and Markets as the B2B divisions to come together to drive innovation. And that's coming not from top down, but from within. At events like this, we will see teams come on site and go, hey, I saw this amazing bit of kit. Do you reckon we could try it? And we've fostered an environment where we allow that to flourish. That's how the interactive mapping work that we're doing with Expo FP and Crowd Connected came about. One of our junior ops team was on site at a competitor event and went, I could find my way around the event so easily. I then went to our event the next week and I got lost before I even walked through the reg desk. And that's then fostered that innovation from within. I think what we're really looking at is how we can passively see how attendees interact with the different bits of content and exhibitors and how we can develop services around that. So focused very much on providing the visitor experience with a new element.
So does that mean then that real time becomes the holy grail then?
Real time is the holy grail, and real time means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Sometimes when you speak to a team, real time could be 15 minutes. With location-based data, we need that insight in real time. We need to know that, okay, everyone is congregating in this area. From an operational standpoint as well, it gives our operations teams okay, this stage is getting really busy. Is there a way to, at a break, make it bigger, make it smaller? So all of this real-time insight is not just providing the attendees with an enhanced experience. It's giving us as organisers a lot more leeway with our products.
So what advice would you give to organisers looking to maximise the potential of technology? You know, how do they place their bets?
Yeah, so I think you need to really understand your audience, really create a persona of what your audience are doing and what they want from an event. Every app does everything nowadays. Every app can provide every bit of functionality. A lot of the people here will attest to that. What you want to do is understand what your audience are there for. If you've got 15 buttons on an event app, you need to ask why you've got 15 buttons on an event app, because you shouldn't. You should be looking at your audience and going, what are the top 3 things they want to do? And how do I make it as easy to do those things as possible? So that's what we're starting to do. We're looking at our networking events and going, right, okay, we can strip out a lot of the agenda and expo components because people are just here to connect. So we just make the app purely networking. And similarly, we've then got expo only where we'll remove attendee information. So understanding your attendees' objectives is the key part to delivering a good app experience.
Yeah, we're back to the personas. You know, who are the people there? What are they trying to achieve? And I think also part of this audience at Event Tech Live are vendors. I think it's an interesting to hear from Informa, like how do you work with vendors, you know, especially in the innovation space, you know, what could vendors do to put their tech in front of Informa? You know, what is it you're looking for?
I think the first thing is honesty and accountability. So as vendors, do not promise the world and deliver peanuts. I think a lot of people have been stung by that in the past, and there's a lot of hesitation around event tech sometimes from organisers because they've been stung by over-promising, under-delivering. I think my number one point would be have a clear proposition, have a clear understanding of what you're providing, understand the events that you're working with your clients on, understand the demographic, ask those questions. We would be happy with our vendors to share the demographics of the people who attend our events, the personas we've created, and then help shape the product that you're delivering around those personas. It's all about the personas.
Yeah, I think it's nice to hear that. I think the idea that a lot of companies are trying to present the very best of their tech, which is something maybe in the next release or whatever, and you're happy that it's in the next release if you know that what's in the current release is what you've been promised.
Yeah, exactly. There's nothing worse as a organizer having a set of capabilities that you want and seeing it in a roadmap and seeing it going into Q2 24, Q2 25. Q3, Q4, because we want to see demonstrable progress. If you promise something that's going to be delivered next quarter, if you don't deliver it, I'm going to not believe that you're going to deliver anything moving forward. So really deliver to those timelines. Don't just throw something in and say we're going to do it next quarter.
Yeah, and also think, you know, having seen both sides of organisers being very demanding and vendors wanting to please, you know, you can fall into the trap of the organizer asking for something that really is not part of that product, you know, and vendors trying to then going outside of what their actual value proposition is.
I think that's a really, really, really good point. I think what we really want to drive at Informa is a good set of capabilities with different vendors. Having location-based services that are driven by a market leader, having an app that is driven by a market leader, having registration and lead retrieval, market leader. As soon as those vendors try to dabble in other areas, that's when it can get messy.
We've got some questions coming in. First question is, exhibitors are often poor at using technology to properly qualify visitors. Any thoughts on improving this?
Yeah, so some exhibitors go to a show with the sole intention of just collecting as many email addresses as they can. And for those exhibitors, they are very, very difficult to educate around qualification. What you should be doing is, what we do is we work with the sales team. So historically, the sales team has offloaded a client to delivery and operations and have gone, there you go. What we're now asking the sales team is, okay, what is this client's objectives in attending? And if they're after qualified, good leads, that's when we really push and train. So we'll have specific webinars, we'll email them, we will set them up on their lead retrieval portal weeks in advance and have follow-up information if they haven't set questions in the days leading up. It's those vendors and understanding their objectives of attending that means you don't waste your time chasing people who, quite frankly, don't want to get qualified leads.
And do you do much customer success on site at events with exhibitors?
Yeah, I think the difficulty with that has always been once they're on site, it's too late. They're already in the flow. So we really try and aim for at least 60 to 80% of exhibitors having gone in, set up their profiles, scanned hopefully a test badge that we send them to understand how the system works. We provide that on-site support, but that ends up being more query-based. I know how it should work, but it's not working for me. It's really difficult to educate people on site because people are time poor.
Yeah, and I think that's one way that data can be used on site if you've got the right signals, is you look at halfway through day one or end of day one, who isn't either getting value out of the tech or doesn't appear to be getting good results. And you've got an opportunity at the event to turn that around rather than have a rebook kind of nightmare at the end.
No, absolutely. And it's in empowering the sales teams to have those conversations as well. We will have the event tech support teams on site, but we also want the sales guys to believe in the product. So we've made a real conscious effort to train them. So they will see in real time, this company has not had any leads collected. I will go and speak to them rather than it just being, oh, can we send the app help desk person to them? We will send the person who has that relationship with the exhibitor, which has become a really powerful tool because people are more receptive to those who they know.
You like this one. Should we be looking to get rid of physical badges? They still remain essential for the initial contact.
It's a really difficult one. I can see from a sustainability standpoint why digital badges are progressing at larger shows. At Connect, we kind of specialise in knowledge and networking opportunities, which are events from generally 500 to 5 to 10,000. We still have a strong desire from attendees to have a physical badge. Like you said, it's more embarrassing if I bumped into you and we hadn't spoken for a year and I was like, oh no, I know Aid, but I'd forgotten his name. And that is the anecdotal feedback we get back consistently. I think for larger trade shows where you've got a huge audience who probably don't know each other and are less of a community, so to speak, digital badges are a fantastic way to just deliver a more seamless experience on site. But for a lot of our shows, which are very specific and have built a very engaged community, the physical badge, unfortunately, isn't going anywhere.
And also, it's now being used for other things. At the Informa Tech event that I was at a couple of weeks ago, people can put their pronouns on badges. You can have things saying you're a first-time attendee, for people to kind of look out for. There's different ways it can be used.
Yeah, and we did something recently where we had little pins which said what people were interested in. So topics they were interested in, or I'm a runner, or I like coffee, or I'll see you in the bar tonight. We had those kind of things which encourages people to have those conversations and delivers a better experience really for all the attendees.
I've got another question here. Thinking about the language we use to market products to exhibitors and visitors, how do we break down the barrier of industry language versus layman's terms, e.g. badge versus QR code?
That's a great question. That is a real challenge. I think I came from a very technology background. I used the terms of QR code, BLE, RFID. Fundamentally, people don't care about the technology that is being delivered. They want to know the outcome. So what we really try to focus on is providing exhibitors with language that they'll understand around the outcome. So it wouldn't be you can scan the QR code on the badge. It will be we'll give you the facility to capture leads on site through your phone. And then that opens up the dialogue with the exhibitor to say, okay, well, how do I do that? Because as soon as you say, these are the 4 steps that you need to follow, download app, install app, log into app, download QR code, people immediately switch off. So we kind of try and use very informal, very loose language to hook exhibitors in. And when they go, oh, I want to collect contact details on site, how do I do that? We open up the conversation.
Yeah, it's about talking about what their objective is.
Exactly.
The next question is, on the BLE chips for session tracking, this is wearable technology, I assume. How does that go alongside digital badges? We want to decrease physical badges for our sustainability focus. So a similar kind of question.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So the BLE chips for us are at our conferences where we still use physical badges. If digital badges are being used, what I'm looking at as an event technologist is the Disney experience. And I know everyone always says the Disney experience, but if you go to a Disney resort now, you have a digital badge. When you scan your digital badge, you get a RFID or BLE wristband, and that then is your key to around the show. So I think that is where we could see it isn't a physical badge on the person, but they still have a piece of wearable tech, albeit a wristband around their wrist, and that can be preloaded with food tokens, coffee tokens, all of that kind of stuff, and following in that Disney-esque model.
And I think also that it's starting to happen that there's an expectation that things are going to be recycled. I had not a bizarre, a moment of joy when the person at the door put this lanyard on without a clip. And I thought, well, that's great. It was just a tiny thing. It's just a lanyard, but there's an extra sustainability thing to that. What are your views on facial recognition to speed up reg?
I think it's a slippery slope. I think facial recognition isn't as good as we think it is. It gets a lot of people confused. You see things outside of the events world of that happening consistently. I don't think facial recognition has it's a sledgehammer to crack a peanut. If the issue is you're lined at registration and you think walking up and having a camera recognize you and print your badge is any quicker than having a mobile wallet or a QR code, it's a sledgehammer to crack a nut.
What do you think the applications? Do you think there are valuable applications for it?
I think once within the venue, there are potential applications. There's some stuff that can be done, and we're exploring around how do you see if you put cameras that recognize human-shaped objects but not humans, and how they move around the venue. That could be great data. It could give us a human-shaped objects, not the person, is following around and moving around the venue in this way. But again, it's really finding what is the problem we're solving by deploying that tech.
So facial detection and sentiment rather than this is Josh.
Yeah, exactly.
I've got another question. How do you encourage other internal teams, marketers, content, etc., to adopt a tech-driven mindset? Working in event technology, I find it difficult and frustrating that my peers don't care for it. Well, we've all been there.
Yeah, we have all definitely been there. Get your teams on site. Get your teams there to experience the products. That has been the number one thing for us to drive internal adoption. We do have, sometimes your marketing teams might not come to the event, or they might just come in for a day, or they might just come in, go to one session and leave. Really encourage your teams to get involved in the delivery side and the operational side of the event. So get them to sit on a reg desk, as painful and repetitive and a mundane task as it can be, but get them to understand why we have to do things a certain way. And once they have that lived experience, they will start to understand, actually, this is why we need to invest in certain things to deliver a better customer experience. We want to get as good data on site as an event as the marketers get pre-event tracking on a website. And I think that is a guiding principle to say, help us get there. Help us get to a position where we're getting as good data on site as you get tracking a website pre-event.
And as we were talking before the event, we were talking about how a lot of people are saying, disruption is coming. People are going to do more with data. But is disruption really coming? It took Tesla to come into the automobile industry for all of the manufacturers to wake up and realize that actually they could produce electric cars. There's a feeling that there's kind of all to play for in events because the existing players don't seem to be moving very fast.
Yeah, and I think that comes with the territory of being a large organization. It is more difficult to innovate. There's a great book, if anyone wants to, called Transforming Nokia, and how they essentially had to, what was a small innovation team is now actually their core product, and their old phones team has literally been wiped out. I think it's really difficult for big organizations when you get into a rhythm of doing things to innovate, and I think what we want to encourage our suppliers to do as well is to set up those innovation teams internally. Everyone, the innovation part has always been part of someone's job, we find. Actually, we need teams dedicated on innovation to work with us, understand the personas, understand the problems, and start to build solutions to fix that.
I think that's a really great point to end on. Thank you very much, Josh.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.